Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Garnet Heraman, managing partner at Aperture Venture Capital, and Gitte Peterson, founder and CEO of Genomic Expression.
I am a serial biotech entrepreneur on my third company now. And as anybody in startup know, the majority of your time get used or spent fundraising. So I would say that's my job. Um, I have, prior to that, worked as an advisor for governments and the European Commission, and also brought in a lot of funding to the Danish biotech industry, which is similar size as the biotech industry in Massachusetts. And prior to that, I worked for Novo Nordisk. And when I came over here, I had to explain this is a small Danish company that makes insulin and growth hormone. I don't have to explain anything anymore.
Got it. Okay, Garnet, go ahead.
uh Serial founder during the dot-com era and self-taught angel investor, two-time fund manager. Um, yeah, inveterate skeptic, maybe even
Okay.
pessimist.
All right, we're going to come back to your story in a second, but first let's get to Gitte's because I have a feeling it's a circuitous journey from another land, from the accent.
It is. I was and continue to be. Um, so the company I'm fundraising for now is a RNA AI platform for next generation cures. And we are at a stage where we have overcome the regulatory hurdle and we ready to scale. And uh, what have happened in the industry, and that's back to policy because of the uncertainty in the industry. It's very difficult for early stage companies to fundraise. And that's certainly been part of the journey in 2025. We can get back to the outlook on 2026 because I do think it's going to change and turn around. It's more, I have a more optimistic outlook. We closed our seed and we're going in for a Series A.
Where you are now. Talk to us about your journey from high school or college.
Oh, wow. Um, so I actually had to answer as the question was framed a little differently. What inspired me to go in after science? And I'm out of a third generation family of scientists and entrepreneurs. So you can say it's in the DNA at this point. We had a branch that immigrated where there was no contact, and they also scientists. So I think it's in the DNA or whatever you want to believe. But I grew up with discussions of the existence of black holes. I was super interested in the natural world and science. My moment was really when I learned that DNA is a blueprint of life and it translates into so many different types of cells and it can do so many amazing things, different species. And I wanted to understand more about that. So that was when I went to high school in Denmark, you could choose whether you wanted to do humanities or science. I went the science way and I went top level. There was different uh, levels. And the more science you threw at me, and that happens again when I went to college, I went to the Danish Technical University, my grades just kept climbing up. So I was top 5%. I got a letter from Novo Nordisk. They wanted to hire me, and that's the only job I ever applied to.
Wow. And then, so when did you come over here?
I came over here in the first time in 92. I was expatriated or sent to commercialize a product for Novo Nordisk. So I would also say I come from a very entrepreneurial biotech company. It wasn't that large when I started. I knew Mads Øvelsen. I was part of the first batch of hopeful management trainees. Um, and he was so inspirational. And that was the main reason I wanted to work for Novo Nordisk. So leadership matters. And I was here in 92 and had a fantastic time. I sometimes say that you go to Germany and you try to convince a German scientist to buy your products, he want to reproduce all your data. And you go to an American scientist and you tell them how you did your data and how he can make or she more money by working with you, and they start buying. So the timeline from introduction to implementation was very short, and I liked that. I thought it was a great place to commercialize. So when I came back, I left Novo Nordisk and started an advisory firm where I helped early stage biotech companies enter into the US, and I brought some with me when I came back in 97. And the first company I got into Amgen, and the second one into Genentech. So Denmark again has very solid science, and especially in life science, a lot of talent and early stage companies. And what changed between 92 and 97 was the Danish Innovation Fund was established. And there was grant programs that were very similar to, and that eventually became across Europe, the SBIR program, which we will talk about in a second. And it helped de-risk a lot of bold scientific ideas. Um, However, they still needed development and commercialization. And that was my superpower. I was able to connect a lot of dots. I knew understand the science. I knew who needed it. That's basically the superpower I brought to the table.
Nice. All right. Garnet, tell us about your story.
Okay. Uh, Columbia, NYU, London School of Economics, undergraduate, graduate, and then a little bit of graduate work abroad. And I don't know that I want to go much further than that, but I want to echo a little bit of the, hey, I'm a biotech entrepreneur because it's in my DNA thing, but maybe not it wasn't such a straightforward story. So my parents are split down the middle, right? One is very elitist and went to Oxford and became a professor, and the other is the descendant of people who made their living cutting grass on plantations in the side of the road in Trinidad. So
Wow.
I'm sort of like the perfect mixture of the two because I have certain tendencies on one side and then maybe more earthy, visceral tendencies on the other side. So here I am.
I love
So
gardening.
right, exactly, or
I
at
hate
least
cutting grass though.
or at least reading about it. I mean, we have a gardener here, and I spent a lot of time like thinking about the kinds of flowers that we want and that we want to plant, and let someone else do it because
I like
because
to
I
get dirty and into the ground. I love it.
Mostly because I can't bend that way anymore. And now because of the injury, I really can't bend that way. So, it's just easier to delegate.
Yeah, I
But
get
we
it.
do we do enjoy the garden a lot. The indoor outdoor lifestyle on the West Coast is like a big thing. So, okay, sorry. What else? Uh, Accidental entrepreneur. Gita and I think, met in the late
Yeah.
90s, right?
Yep.
So we were both part of something called Can Apple in the Canadian consulate. You remember that?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
long time ago. And so Can Apple was the internet technology telecom um, commercial attaché of the Canadian consulate. and they did events. I know they did events with you, Gitte, a lot, right? So,
Yep.
and she and I were on a short list of people who were tapped to speak a lot back then. So this was the beginning of the dot-com era, right?
Yep.
Dot-com era. I built 3 companies. I got cashed out 3 times. So the 3 companies were Stock
Awesome.
Object, University Ventures, and Venture Vortex. Um, the first 2 were probably more memorable than the third. For instance, Stock Objects grew out of a digital art project called Rhizome, and Rhizome is now part of the new museum downtown. So, um, yeah. After that, I just started. I took time off and then started investing. I set up like my family office in 2008 or 2009. Um, Made a bunch of investments because of my sort of family heritage. I very early on, because of meeting people like Gitte so early in my career, I have been investing in female founders since like 2011.
Thank you.
Around 2011, I met a female founder who was building an e-commerce company, although she didn't know it was going to be an e-commerce company when we met. But, Jim, I've shared that with you. That's Karina Dresses. That's one of the most successful side projects I've ever worked on, right? Um, and a bunch of other investments, a bunch of other CEO advisory roles. One of my CFO for all 3 companies, and I started one fund in Denver called Aegis Investment Partners. And then fast forward till almost 2019, William and I started Aperture in 2020 and launched in 21. Aperture, $75 million fintech fund backed by the world's biggest financial brands.
Awesome.
Great. Great. Thank you for that, both of you. And I wanted people to get a sense for where you come from and what you do, because our discussion today is going to focus on the effects of the Trump administration's policies on the innovation ecosystem. So you both come from the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the investment ecosystem, the science and biotech ecosystem, and we know that there have been policies that we're still feeling the effects from, but we are concerned universally. And I wanted to get your perspectives on them. First, with the sciences, and we can start with you, Gitte, as you see it, the implications, both short and long term, in general.
Yeah. So I would start with the effects of the uncertainty, which literally was immediate. We were supposed to close something in February, and that investor pulled out. I have met investors from Europe that literally said, "We love what you do. I'm not investing in the US." And that doesn't make it easier to be a startup, right? That suddenly the world we thought was joined around solving real important healthcare problems turns into being divided. The other thing I want to mention is the fact that the SBIR program is not reinstated. Everybody thought it would be. I think the deadline was in October, and it's still, and it goes in 3 or 4 cycles every year. It was supposed to open and have a submission January 5th, and we were lined up to file grants. So I raised 6.5 million grants. We're working on a small grant right now, but that's devastating. We were ready to file phase 2. Phase 1 is up to 400K, and phase 2 is can be, depending on what you do, 2.5 to 4 million. And suddenly we have no sight of that kind of funding. That was for a clinical utility study. We already lined up the principal investigators, etc. I'm not the only one in that situation, and I have talked to several CEOs and founders in the life science industry that not only have we not opened for new applications for SBIR, but they canceled ongoing grants where there was already a commitment. That's tough, right? You're in the middle of, it could be a clinical study where patients are benefiting from your product and innovation, and now you have to shut it down. I was at the investor conference in January, in New York. I think it was in March, and one of the investors presenting was asked, "Well, is VCs going to pick up that slack?" And that was a sounding no. You know, you have to. The tough part in life science is that you have to de-risk the science piece with non-dilutive funding in order to get dilutive funding. And when you close, you eliminate that opportunity, what's going to happen? You can imagine what's going to happen. The innovation will not happen. It's that simple. So that innovation will happen somewhere else, right? So people will take their ideas, their brain, and they will go somewhere else where they can get their ideas funded.
Got it. Gitte, thank you for that. That talks about the sciences, some of those federally funded programs. Do you see the same thing in other sectors, Garnet?
Oh, absolutely. And I want to start where she started, which I think is a really great sort of general platform to move back and sort of move back the frame a little bit and look at. So uncertainty. Uh, I'm pretty sure she said this, but I'll give you my corporate perspective on it. Anytime there's greater uncertainty or volatility in the marketplace, the default answer for the people who don't have an opinion or who are not pundits, right? Don't have like a geopolitical consultant on staff, is to wait and see, or sit on your hands, or freeze the budget, or there's a whole bunch of euphemisms, right? Pause the skunk works. I've heard all that stuff. And so that started in March, of 25, and with the announcement of the first tariffs. And so that had a chilling effect for a period of weeks or months. And then, in my recollection, and this also brings it closer to my sort of segment of expertise, Jim, um, the assault on liberal progressive universities and by extension their endowments, right? The biggest endowments in this country are the top 10 universities. That started in the middle of the year, and why that's impactful in general is obviously, it has a negative effect on things like tech transfer. I mean, for the audience members who don't remember the actual dialectic going on here, was Trump threatened a number of universities with the removal of their nonprofit status, in which case, all of them all of their budgets and their expenditures and all of that kind of would have been thrown into a state of like deep disarray, right? And a lot of them would have probably been losing money. So that happened, and things like tech transfer and all sorts of other things ceased. This hits close to home for Aperture VC, who originally started raising our second fund in March, unfortunately, in March of 25. And so a number of the universities that were explicitly interested in investing in our second fund, Duke University among them, were on the hit list for Trump's litigation. And so because of the uncertainty that Gitte mentioned applied to this particular segment, everyone just froze. So instead of, raising a lot of money, $100 million, like we thought in 6 months, we hoped for anyway, everybody was like, oh, we're excited, but we're going to wait.
Yeah.
And so it had a chilling effect on, the the prime financial input on innovation in this entire fucking country, which is venture capital fundraising, right? On the small side, obviously it didn't affect Andreessen or Lightspeed or Sequoia or any of those other folks, right? So, um, but my overall takeaway, since then has been a little bit more, to be honest, balanced. I see good things coming out of the, you know, I'll say adversarial position towards China on things like on exports and intellectual property protection. I personally have been, screaming at the top of my lungs since basically Bush won, about needing to be tougher on China, and no one listened. So whatever. Um, so I think that's a good thing, net net. Uh, I'm going to say this in the spirit of, you know, engendering more conversation versus less,
Mm.
because I even think some of the things that he's done recently in Venezuela and threatening to do in other places in the Western Hemisphere are probably going to be good things for the American economy.
We covered those sectors, the uncertainty, tariffs. Can we talk to tariffs? Obviously, that feeds into the
That's the
uncertainty.
uncertainty. That's the uncertainty, right?
Right.
Because everyone, whether you're a government, central bank, or a large fund of funds or a fund, you all allocate according to macro policies, right? So whether it's tariffs, whether it's interest rate, whether it's other, quotas, everyone moves within the frame of these macroeconomic, guidelines, as it were, parameters. And so when you say, hey, I'm going to change all of the macroeconomic
Yeah,
parameters, the first thing people do is they freeze.
yeah,
That's right.
uncertainty. Yeah.
And what about immigration and the visas and the
I want to inject a positive thing at this point because we started talking about that. That is positive things. The FDA had moved forward to start regulating clear labs, and that was put to bed through. I think that started before Trump, but it came the verdict came out during his term, and that is put to bed. That certainly that uncertainty or possibility put a lot of investors uh, to focus on not supporting diagnostics, which is such an integrated part of clinical uh, care, especially in oncology. So that was a good thing. And more recently, and that's totally under his administration, a new way to get N of one drugs approved, meaning you have very few patients that are rare diseases. How are you going to get enough patients for a clinical study? And how can you get those N of one, they literally bespoke, made for this unique patient? How are you going to get them approved? And there's a new pathway for that. And that's amazing because without that, and this is also a totally underserved population where there isn't a lot of economic incentives to solve these diseases. So now, with a much less onerous pathway, there is a possibility also for rare cancers to get to treatments that actually works. So
yeah.
that's positive.
No, thank
Yep,
you for that. I appreciate that.
one
And,
more
and
positive
Garnett,
thing. One
go
more
ahead.
positive thing in the spirit of balance and of having a balanced perspective on this, and it's very close to home for us as fintech investors.
Mm.
The liberalization of M&A and the ability to kind of do M&A and do M&A quickly and get the approvals, um, has led to a bunch of things, most recently the Capital One Brex thing. And so, I think that's a good thing overall. The other thing that we're watching very closely is like it, although we're not DeFi, decentralized finance, blockchain, crypto investors. I do think that, having a more liberal perspective on the kinds of things that you are comfortable with from a regulatory standpoint, I do think that's opened up a lot of capital markets opportunities for people. And for us, where we see some of that is in places related to home finance. So like the securitization, blockchain securitization of things like mortgages, that's if that works the way that it's supposed to work, that could only be a good thing going into the future. So
Yeah.
we're pretty excited about those things. The last place where we see really interesting developments that is in financial services is with the very, I mean, I won't say they're giving him out like party favors, but they're giving him out with some liberality, right? Bank charters going to both financial services companies and non-financial services companies. Most recently, Ford and GM both applied for FDIC protection and bank charters. So
Mm.
it's gonna get interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't hear that. Wow. Okay. That is, things are moving. Things are certainly moving. And what about the, let's circle back to some of the concerns we have regarding immigrants, immigrant talent, visas, students. How do you folks see that? I know you're both coming from both coasts and have a good sense for, the environment. So get to how you're based in New York. How are you seeing things from your and obviously you have a European perspective too.
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
Yeah, I want to start out with a fact, and anybody can check this. 50% of all the unicorns are founded by immigrants. So painting immigrants in a negative way is simply counterproductive. The US need immigrants to drive and fuel their economy, small businesses, not just, tech startups, drive a significant proportion of the economy. So vilifying immigrants is unfortunately not uh, helpful and is a deterrent for potentially very talented entrepreneurs. And personally, I know somebody who decided that they want to move back and they're taking their business with them. And they're simply going back to where they came from. And it's not, you know, it's a nice place in Europe. So, why not move back to Europe? I think when there's a disalignment of values, it becomes more difficult. And I think what you will see is that either people do not want to come or they move back. So you will have a brain drain. And you combine that with the lack of grant funding that have and the threat of stopping to fund some of the large institutions. Sometimes it's not just a threat, they just canceled a lot of grants. And what I said in the beginning, science is not, it's not like you have the bright idea in life science and you go into a lab and you have all the data tomorrow. It takes 10 years, sometimes, often, actually. So when you terminate a project like that, it will take decades to recoup. All that data, all the IP, the people behind it, the brains, and the samples are going to get thrown out. You can't, it's impossible to quantify the the loss. It's a significant one.
What about you, Garnet? Do you see that as well from your perspective?
So two answers, philosophical and practical. Philosophical, I'm son of a single mother immigrant, so I am very positively biased towards immigrants in general. And the factoid that Gitte threw out is always shocking, right? I see it fairly regularly, and it always amazes me, and it really cuts to the what I believe is the foundation belief in this country, right? But as a historian, that foundational belief wasn't really that different in the last 200 years. There's a history of sort of a adversarial dialectic between the in-group and the out-group in terms of successive waves of immigration, right? So you're probably gonna get censored for this, Jim, but whatever. So the Irishmen hate the Dagos and the Dagos hate the wetbacks and so on and so forth. And that represents about 200 years of immigration in this country, right? And so I'm not sure what's different now. So on the practical side, every day as an investor in small companies, I wake up grateful that no one in the Trump administration is stopping people from sending money abroad, for all of the amazing talent that is resident in India and Bangladesh and in Denmark, in Colombia, the country, and less so maybe to the university. I don't know, my alma mater, but so the essence of the building that goes on at the earliest stages is outsourced to these amazing countries and regions, and there's a lot of cross-border, money movement, and you know that's to me that would be a Rubicon. If there was any kind of issue at the federal or policy or regulatory level around that kind of engagement with the rest of the world, I would say it's time to change administrations, you know, because the world really does fuel North American innovation in that way. And you could make a strong argument, Jim, that us shipping money to a Lebanese computer programmer is better for fucking Beirut than it is letting that, programmer immigrate. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
right?
that's an
So,
interesting perspective.
yeah, just in the spirit of keeping a balanced
Yeah,
perspective.
it's an interesting perspective. What we've seen in life science, in healthcare, is that China have caught up with new INDs filings for
Yeah.
FDA approval for new drugs. And certain investors have discovered that. So now they are investing in the development and they retain rights to commercialize in the US. So it is interesting. Um, I think that, especially in innovation, any centralized way of managing brains is not going to work, and fueling innovation many places. It's supports the best to win, and that is the American way, I believe. Yeah, I'm an immigrant, so
I
I'm
want to
betting
do I
that.
want to do a plug for someone that you might know, Jim. Do you know Paolo Gaudiano, professor? I think CUNY. You should have him on the show at some point. So he has a forthcoming book. Uh, I was asked to write a blurb, and we'll see how that works out. But the book is called something that I believe in, that I'm 90% sure most Americans can't even pronounce properly, right?
Mm,
The book is called Meritocracy.
yeah.
The adjective is what I believe most people can't even pronounce. That's so how far away it is from their thought process. But meritocratic. If we ever get to a fucking truly meritocratic society,
Mm,
all of the positive attributes about the pro-immigration or the positive attributes all of outsourcing and globalization, all of those things will come into sharp focus in my opinion. But you know it's kind
Yeah.
of it's kind of a Shangri-La. We haven't I don't believe we've I can't speak for the other two geniuses on this call, but you know, I don't believe we live in a meritocracy. So
no, we don't. You mentioned female founders and the numbers are against us. And it's not because our ideas are bad.
of course not,
Yeah, it's not because we're bad at running businesses. That's
or
something
not good leaders, right? I
are
mean,
not good leaders.
women lead the
So
family unit everywhere in the world.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what
I
the
mean,
fuck?
most data says that female managers and entrepreneurs are more resourceful and better. So, but let's just go back to one of the concerns about the immigrants, students, right? I think I shared an article about China and all the other countries now poaching or attracting all the students who can't get into the US or are dissuaded from coming to the US. And I guess the concerns are that we could lose a generation of talent. and set us back many, many years. So I just wanted to make sure I got your insights and your thoughts on that concerning reality.
I can just say that the Danes are already attracting talent. We don't need investments. The books are balanced beautifully, even though we spend proportionally as much on defense as the US. We are interested in talent. Yeah, the Danes are. I'm a dual citizen at this point. And the talent is available.
Garnet, did
I
you want to add anything?
I wish I could say the same about the US. It's not clear to me that's true. I think it was true when, maybe when Gitte and I were grad students. I mean, it just feels like this country is very interested in that the 1%, the global 1%, that was rich before they ever showed up on the shores, of our country to get educated. And so, you
Mm.
know, I I have mixed feelings about that because maybe I'm closer to that 1% now, but when we got here in 1970, we were in the bottom the bottom 10% or something, right? I mean,
Mm.
so it feels to me like the climate right now is not very amenable to people with to use Gita's phrasing, the talent, but maybe
Mm.
not the social and the economic strengths, that come with it. Um, we want the global 1%, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on a positive note, let's we usually do just one thing as we conclude our conversation. And I want to make sure I get your insights on how to help entrepreneurs, or what feedback or suggestions do you have for entrepreneurs who are looking to grow and scale their company in 2026? Get that?
Yeah, I think that you also talked about being what's the outlook for 2026? We closed our seed and bridge to a we are scaling, we are funded, and we're excited about that. Um, and we have investors that have bigger pocketbooks for the aid that are engaged, multiple call, meetings and interest. So I have a positive outlook, but that's very much centered around what's happening with the company that I'm responsible for. Um, I'm a little bit more concerned about the geopolitical landscape. Most of my conversations at JP Morgan, which is the biggest investor conference in healthcare, was I'm so sorry about Greenland. And I don't think that the abrasiveness and the threatening the existence of NATO that kept us safe for so long. That's really been, my concern. My main concern. And again, back to, Garnet, and what we said in the beginning, uncertainty is certainly not something that makes it easy for any company, whether it's a startup or a more mature company, to navigate. No company on the planet only plans to sell products in the US. So we, to a certain extent, may also have problems when we start thinking about selling our products outside the US. That's concerning.
Got it. All right, Garnet.
And just to be clear, the question is one piece of advice, right? Don't be dependent on VC or any other outside money. Do what you have to do as a result of personal funding, customer funding, customer success, organic revenues to get to a position of strength and you know navigate the capital markets from there.
Got it. Gitte, do you have one tip that you recommend to all
Yeah,
entrepreneurs?
I think there's certain things you can do without funding and certain things you can't, especially in life science. And what I will say to the type of companies that I represent is really you have to keep trying and not give up. And there are multiple, what we've done, and that's why we're still here. We have unlocked every possible funding source on the planet. And it takes time, but you need to keep grinding on that. And if you really truly have an amazing idea that save lives, and you got to put in that effort. I hope you will.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Before we get to our closing poems or quotes or sayings, I wanted to just ask any predictions for 2026 or hopes and dreams. Garnet?
Uh, yeah. Uh, uh, I think we're in the middle of it already, but you're going to see a lot more data points. The entire sort of notion of early stage tech venture development has shifted, and I think it's important to kind of keep track of how that's being influenced by AI. Um, my hope is that it's positively, my hope is that it's a great, provider of meritocracy and like a more level playing field. Um, my hope is that it gives founders more leverage in capital discussions with assholes like myself in the venture capital business. Um, and that this year, 26, marks a turning point, in how we think about these things going forward, and that there's a general improvement.
Okay.
Talk about hopes and aspirations.
Thank you. Gitte?
So I hope for stability. I think that will take out a lot of the uncertainty that makes it hard to fundraise. I'm totally with Garnet that we we experiment with AI. We can see the benefits of it, and healthcare is probably one of the places that is going to benefit the most. It's one of the places with the most data and where you can have the greatest impact. So I can't wait to see those solutions materialize for the benefit of patients.
Got it. Thank you. All right. We usually end with a quote or a poem or a saying.
This is an excerpt from a book called the Manual of the Warrior of the Light by Paulo Coelho. Every warrior of the light has been afraid to enter a combat. Every warrior of the light has betrayed and lied in the past. Every warrior of the light has lost faith in the future. Every warrior of the light has trodden a path that was not his or her own. Every warrior of the light has failed in his or her spiritual obligation. Every warrior of the light has said yes when he meant no. Every warrior of the light has hurt someone he or she loved. This is why he and she are warriors of the light. They had endured all of this suffering without ever losing the hope to improve.
Nice. Thank you. Gitte, go ahead.
Yeah, this is actually something we share in the family, and it's a quote by Søren Kierkegaard, who is a Danish philosopher. Life is lived forwards, but understood backwards. It's logic. But I think we will end up with understanding the period we are going through right now better as we approach the end of 2026. But right now, we're living it forward.
Got it. Thank you so much. That was nice. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.